Me on the line is Ben Harris-Quinney. He's chairman of the Bow Group. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Is it likely that a new Prime Minister will face a vote of no confidence before the year is over?
There's a very decent possibility of it. I think, as to your point, I'm a Brexiteer, but much of what Boris has been saying is not true.
That's a good start.
It's as you say, there is very little to no chance that there's going to be a different agreement made with the European Union by the 31st of October, certainly. So it's going to come down to whether we delay that deadline, which a number of the candidates were talking about, including Michael Gove and Rory Stewart, or whether we push for a no-deal scenario, or I think the third option is a general election, really.
And would you say a general election will be put forward before the October 31st deadline or after?
Well, I think what the new leader of the Conservative Party, which is probably going to be Boris Johnson, will do is push for a no-deal scenario, or initially go through the motions of attempting to renegotiate. Of
course, there will be that pantomime,
option, and then push for a no-deal, but Parliament will reject it. And then the remaining option is really a general election. But I think it is important for the leader of the Conservative Party to be seen doing all they can to leave the European Union in the eyes of the electorate. And that's where Theresa May fell down, that a lot of people felt that she was actually what is described as Bremain. She was notionally pursuing Brexit, but actually pursuing a deal that didn't represent Brexit.
But don't you think
wasn't willing to go for no deal.
Don't you think that deal, the withdrawal agreement that Theresa May ended up with, was the only one possible after she laid down those red lines? And if I take you back to December 2017, that joint agreement, the joint report, which basically introduced the concept of the backstop, which was signed up to by Messrs. David Davis and Boris Johnson at the time. Now, you could say that maybe they didn't understand what they were signing up to, which says a lot about them says a lot about Boris Johnson as a potential Prime Minister, if he could read a document and not understand the implications, which other people, political commentators, were perfectly capable of interpreting as this is the backstop and that's not going away because we've signed up to it. Wasn't the withdrawal agreement really the only agreement that Theresa May could have walked out there with?
No, I think there was an option of what was described as a Canada triple plus, which there were signals from Brussels that they would have been willing to explore that direction.
Yeah.
And the other one, of course, is to go for no deal, which May said she was willing to do, but when it came to it, she clearly wasn't willing to pursue that. Now, this is why I say there's an important distinction. Even if Parliament rejects the Prime Minister's approach, May wasn't seen to be someone who was willing to try that. Mm-hmm. And I think the rise of the Brexit Party would have been far less significant if May was seen as someone who was willing to try all of those options, even if she was then blocked by Parliament or Bercow or rebuffed by the EU. And that's where I think there'll be a shift. Someone like Johnson, they'll be willing to push for that, even if Parliament rejects them. And I think the Brexit base will be more favourable than if they try that. But ultimately, you've got to look at what the political reality is going to be. And I think if a new leader of the Conservative Party does try that, we're looking at a general election when Parliament very likely rejects it.
But can I just clarify on something that you just said earlier? You said that it was avoidable for Theresa May to end up with the withdrawal agreement. You mentioned the Canada Go Faster Stripe Triple Plus free trade agreement that we were offered to start with. But wasn't the problem with that free trade agreement the fact that we would have had to have a border in either in Northern Ireland or between, remember, that was offered to us with Great Britain, so therefore there would have had to have been a border in the Irish Sea. This is why we're in the mess that we're at. If Theresa May at the time had said, well, if we're going to have Brexit, the only way we're going to have it is with a border down the Irish Sea, sorry, Northern Ireland, then, yeah, that Canada plus deal would have been realistic. But it was never going to be with a Conservative and Unionist party.
Well, I think there was certainly support in the DUP for a deal that was quite different from the withdrawal agreement. But you're right, the reason that Theresa May didn't pursue that was that she felt that there was a risk that would ultimately lead to the breakup of the union. There's certainly an equal risk of that, I would argue, with the withdrawal agreement, and we've seen that from the DUP in not supporting the withdrawal agreement. But I think the problem with May is that she was unwilling to depart from the status quo, and I think the Brexit vote signalled that we would have to depart from the status quo. So she was unwilling to countenance a Canada Triple Plus. She was unwilling to countenance, when it came to it, a no deal. And you know, if a Prime Minister is serious about leaving the European Union, leaving the customs union, leaving the single market, all of those things need to be on the table, and they have to be willing to pursue them if it comes to it.
And do you think that Boris Johnson, if he is to get the keys to number 10, do you think that Boris Johnson would take us out on no deal on October the 31st? Let's set aside the fact that the difficulty that he would have with the House of Commons, but do you think he would take that decision?
I think he would, because he has calculated that his political career and the political fortunes of the Conservative Party require a leader that is seen to pursue all options to take us out of the European Union. As I say, if then it's blocked by Parliament or the European Union, that's one thing, but at the very least, I think the leader of the Conservative Party needs to be seen to have acquitted all options. The problem with Boris is that I don't think he has a full grasp of the detail, and B, he's not actually the figure that a lot of Brexiteers and Conservatives think he is. You know, he's simply an opportunist. And many of the things he's saying about Brexit, you know, are simply unachievable, that we're going to get a completely different deal by the 31st of October. You know, I, as a Brexiteer, would acknowledge that the chances of that are almost zero. Not least because the new European Commission needs to be appointed. And
well, they don't sit till November 1st, which is the day after we leave. But Jeremy Hunt is pretty much saying the same message. So as chairman of the Bow Group, who would you like to see become leader of your party? You're saying that Boris Johnson is an opportunist. I take it that you're not going to throw your weight behind him, so then it'll have to be Jeremy Hunt. But his tune is not that different to Mr. Johnson's.
Well, I think Hunt has been more realistic about the likely process. He said that he wants to avoid a no deal but would keep it on the table, but he also hasn't ruled out an extension, which, as I say, both Rory Stewart and Michael Gove talked about also. From the Bow Group's point of view, we are very depressed about the standard and the choice that is before the membership of the Conservative Party. We are very much in favour of a much wider choice for the membership, not being whittled down to just two candidates. But we will obviously be watching very closely the process of the last 4 weeks of this leadership election, and we'll be seeing what offers the candidates are willing to make to the membership. One thing that we think is very important is democratic reform of the Conservative Party, to put the members back in charge, to try and revitalise the party in the way that the Labour Party has done, and reconnected to a genuine movement.
There's quite a lot of Labour members that will disagree with you as to who's in charge, but I take your point. Ben Quinney Harris, thank you very, very much for your time. Really appreciate that. Chairman of the Bow Group. Only moving on because I am running out of time. We're going to take a quick